KJP threw down some brand new rules for White House reporters yesterday. It's now dangerous to ask her certain questions. Actually, it's only one reporter, the one who actually asks her questions, Peter Doocy. We're going to show you everything you need to see there. Plus, Kamala Harris doesn't give two licks about your Second Amendment rights. Constitution, what's that? Who cares? We'll show you what she said yesterday about it and also what she said many years ago about it. And if you like your Second Amendment, you're not going to like the prospect of President Kamala Harris. Plus, J.D. Vance squares off with a New York Times reporter, and it was a verbal UFC match, and it was gorgeous. You're going to see every bit of it coming up. Well, now, I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. A little bit of acting there. A little bit of acting. Did the watch thing? Now, a bit of acting. Thanks for joining us. By the way, there's lots of reports about explosives at the scene of Trump's rally coming up in a couple of hours at Nassau Coliseum. Apparently, bad reports. They were training a police dog, apparently, to sniff out potential explosives. But why they picked this moment to train the dog? You know, just 3 days after an assassination attempt while tens of thousands assemble in Long Island, New York, I'll never know. Doesn't seem like the best idea. Hey, I've got an idea. Let's, train a police dog on explosives and put some potential dangerous, hazardous materials nearby because, things aren't tense at all. Anyway, whatever reports you're seeing out there about a potential explosive device, it appears that is not the case. But if we get updates during this program, we'll certainly deliver them to you. Thank you for watching. Thanks for watching our live stream that begins basically at noon every single day here on whatever platform you're watching us. And if you're watching us after the fact, please like and subscribe and get those alerts. So when we go live, you'll know about it. And we appreciate it. And thank you for all the support and all the help you're giving us so that more people can see what we're doing every single day here at Town Hall Media. So yesterday, Karine Jean-Pierre had her first press briefing after the second assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. And as you can well imagine, the vast majority of the reporters were basically asking her questions similar to this. Karine Jean-Pierre, does the president agree that Donald Trump is basically responsible for all of these assassination attempts on his life? Does the president agree that Donald Trump's been asking for it? I mean, it was only a matter of time, right? Does the president agree with that? That's pretty much what all the reporters asked, except for Peter Doocy, who actually sort of recognized the elephant in the room. And by the way, the elephant in the room was wearing orange and has very curly hair. Take a look.
It's been only 2 days since somebody allegedly tried to kill Donald Trump again. And you're here at the podium in the White House briefing room calling him a threat. How many more assassination attempts on Donald Trump until the president and the vice president and you pick a different word to describe Trump other than threat?
Now, that's actually a great question, although Karine Jean-Pierre, who is never used to actually dealing with great questions that challenge her, she took issue with it, and you'll see that in a moment. But understand exactly the point Peter Doocy is making here, just 2 days after another attempt on Donald Trump's life, and they keep using this word over and over again. In fact, the very first day Joe Biden made a public appearance in Iowa, summer of 2019, when he decided to run for president, when interest rates were low, gas prices were low, unemployment was low, we were living in heydays, we were making peace deals between Arab countries and Israel. Everything was great. So Joe Biden needed a talking point for his presidential campaign in June of 2019. This is pre-COVID, pre-Chinese releasing or accidentally letting a virus slip out of the Wuhan lab, all that stuff, right? So what does Joe Biden do? Well, he called Donald Trump an existential threat to this nation. This is the kind of divisive, violent rhetoric that we've been hearing from Joe Biden and his White House since even before they took possession of the White House, or occupancy of the White House, to be more accurate. They beat this drum all the time. Donald Trump isn't wrong. His policies aren't wrong. We don't have to defeat him on election day. He is a threat. If he wins, we won't have another election in this country. He will be a dictator. He is an existential threat that doesn't have to be defeated at the ballot box. He has to be stopped. He has to be eliminated. This is the language they use. And here she is over and over again calling him a threat. And so Peter Doocy says, seriously, does it take 10 assassination attempts before maybe you change your language? Because people are taking you seriously and they're trying to stop that threat. There is obviously nothing wrong with that question. In fact, it's the only question that should have been asked yesterday. So now let's see how Karine Jean-Pierre reacted.
Peter, if anything from this administration, I actually completely disagree with the premise of your question, the question that you're asking. It is also incredibly dangerous in the way that you're asking it, because American people are watching. And to say that from an administration who has consistently condemned political violence, from an administration where the president called the former president and was thankful, grateful that he was okay, from an administration who has called out January 6th, called out the attack of Paul Pelosi, called out and said we need to lower the temperature after the Butler incident. And now for you to make that kind of comment in your question, because your question involved a comment and a statement. And, it is, that is also incredibly dangerous when we have been very clear in condemning political violence from here. What I have said about the president, the former president, about January 6th is facts that you all have reported. It is fact. When you have a former president who basically says that the election wasn't, the results of the election were not the results of the election. When dozens of more than 60 Republican judges said that it was a free and fair election. More than 60 said it was indeed a free and fair election. You had more than 2,000 people who were told to go to the Capitol. It was one of the darkest days of our democracy. One of the darkest days. There were people law enforcement officers who died because of what happened at the Capitol. And they were there because the former president told them to go there. I mean, I don't know if that's not a threat in our democracy when it was one of the darkest days of our democracy, January 6th, one of the darkest days. And so we have been very clear from here. Now, we can have a disagreement on policies. We can on issues. That is what we should do. It is important to have those disagreements. It is welcome to have those disagreements on the economy, on healthcare, on foreign policy. But when you start bringing political rhetoric, that is not okay. And
okay, but what is calling President Trump a threat but political rhetoric? That's exactly what it is. That's political rhetoric. One person's threat could be another person's saving hope for our Constitution, right? I mean, clearly, it's not objective fact that Donald Trump is a threat to our nation, because I doubt half of this country's voters at this moment in time would be voting for someone to be a threat to our country, would they? That's obviously, logically speaking, Karine Jean-Pierre, and I know this may hurt your curly head there to actually hear this. I'm sorry, I just can't get over the hair. It's just so distracting. I know this might hurt your head to think about it, but it is obvious logic. People don't vote for someone thinking that they are a threat to their own country. So this is a disagreement. It's a matter of opinion. But how you go about articulating that opinion is very important. That's the whole point of political rhetoric. And by consistently beating this drum, look at this answer. That took her 3 minutes to spend most of her time talking about January 6th. And then eventually she says, now we could have policy disagreements. Well, then why did you spend 2.5 minutes talking about January 6th before you finally got to a supposed policy disagreement? Although honestly, at this point, because Kamala Harris changes her policies to match Donald Trump's, I'm not sure what policy disagreements there are. They can't stand on their policies. They can't stand there anymore and tell you that Bidenomics is working and we have the strongest economy on the planet because even their candidate isn't saying that. So if they have nothing to say proactively and positively about why you should vote for them, the only thing left for a politician is to demonize the other guy. And that's exactly what they're doing. And they're doing it with language that is inspiring lunatics to take them at their word. She stands up there and she says, this administration constantly condemns political violence. There's no room for political violence in our society. That being said, Donald Trump is a threat to our nation. He must be stopped at all costs. But let's just be clear here. I condemn political violence. We don't want any violence. But that man right there, he's a threat, and he has to be stopped. I mean, this is Julius Caesar, Brutus's speech level of hypocrisy. I just named the wrong character. It wasn't Brutus. It was oh God, help me out with your Shakespeare, Kevin McMahon. It was oh God. The ally of Julius Caesar who gave the speech and he said, Brutus is an honorable man. Brutus is an honorable man.
Cassius Clay?
No, Cassius, not Cassius Clay. That's Muhammad Ali. No, but not Cassius. The other character who ended up with Cleopatra in the other, who was
Mark Antony.
Mark Antony. Thank you. Did you get that, or did someone say it in the comment section?
No, I got it.
All right. Let me do that again. This is Mark Antony level hypocrisy from Julius Caesar standing up there and saying, oh, Brutus is an honorable man. Brutus is an honorable man. While sticking the proverbial knife in Brutus's back and riling up the crowd to go scalp Brutus and drag him through the streets of Rome. That's what she's doing here. We condemn political violence. We condemn. We don't want any violence. Violence is bad. Violence is horrible. Oh, by the way, Donald Trump is a threat and he has to be stopped. This is all they have. They can't talk about their own policies, so they've got to demonize Donald Trump. And I mentioned it, so let's take a look at it. Here it was, June of 2019, Ottumwa, Iowa. He had just announced his candidacy for president. And again, we had a booming economy. Gas prices are a little over $2 a gallon. Interest rates for homes were like 4.5%. Credit card interest rates were like 15%. We had record low unemployment for African Americans and Latinos and women in this country. Wall Street was exploding. We were making peace deals between Arab nations and Israel. I mean, they had nothing to run on other than demonize Donald Trump, turn him into a monster. And so here was Joe Biden telling the good people of Iowa why they should vote for him.
You know, and I think that, look, I believe that the president is literally an existential threat. This is really dangerous stuff, and it's not easy. He's a threat, in my view, a threat to our core values. And folks, the fact of the matter is that 4 years of Donald Trump will be viewed as an aberration in American history. 8 years will fundamentally change who we are as a nation and how we're viewed around the world.
This is what he has been doing literally from the beginning of his campaign. In fact, the only thing that preceded this appearance in Iowa in 2019 was the video that he put out saying that the reason he was running was because of Charlottesville, because Donald Trump called white nationalists and neo-Nazis very fine people, which of course he never did. Not only has the Joe Biden campaign and now his presidency been based on a pack of lies, but all of those lies have been meant to demonize and dehumanize Donald Trump and turn the American people against him, especially deranged, potentially violent individuals. So spare me the crocodile tears and the righteous indignation. And the Karine Jean-Pierre saying, I cannot believe you would say such that. That is dangerous. That question you asked me is dangerous. Even asking me such a thing is dangerous. You're putting me in danger. You're putting all of us in danger. Your words are violence, Peter Doocy. No, you know what violence is? Violence is violence. Violence is violence. And we're seeing violence. We're seeing violence inspired by your rhetoric right now. So let's see how she finishes up here. This lover of the First Amendment, lover of a free press, lover of freedom of speech. Let's see how she finishes up here with Peter Doocy, a reporter just doing his job.
That's what you've heard from us, too. You've heard of differences on policies.
But to your point, there are people watching at home who might miss the part where you say, let's lower the temperature. And there are mentally unstable people who are attempting to kill political candidates, attempting to kill Donald Trump. And they are still hearing this White House refer to him as a threat. Is there no concern that people are taking that literally?
We're using examples. We're not just saying that just to—
Oh, well, I mean, hey, that makes it okay. Sure. We're calling him. Do you notice how she doesn't object to the premise of this question? I mean, good for Doocy, as always. Imagine being the only man in the room like he is. Imagine being the only guy in the room surrounded by people, and you're the only one brave enough to stand up and challenge this person. But he is, and God bless him for his courage. But his question was great. There are deranged people out there who will hear you use this language, and they will want to take it upon themselves to neutralize that threat that you have identified. And we've already seen 2 people try to do it. And instead of reject that and say, well, you're wrong about that. No, instead she says, well, we are giving examples. In other words, you're right. You're right. Deranged people could take our rhetoric here and turn it into action. But at least we're backing up our language with examples that will even further motivate those maniacs. We're giving examples? That's the best she's got? At least we're explaining why he's a threat. At least we're showing you why he has to be eliminated. So come on, give us some credit here.
To say it. January 6th, Peter. January 6th. Wait, January 6th. How many times do we have this? January 6th, 2021. That is a fact.
I'm sorry. I know some people get frustrated when I interrupt, but I just got to chat. You realize that the only thing she is capable of talking about right now about how giving voters are a reason to vote for Kamala Harris instead of Donald Trump is something that occurred before their presidency even began. January 6th, January 6th, January 6th. She literally repeated it like 4 or 5 times just now. That's the basis of their entire reelection campaign. Because this is a reelection campaign. This is 4 more years of Biden-Harris is what it is. It's just that Biden has been shoved aside. Why do you need 4 more years? Because of something that happened 2 weeks before we took office. This is how backed against the wall they are right now. This is how little they have to run on. This is why it's a fair observation to make that it's almost like they're utilizing very loose and dangerous political rhetoric to equalize this campaign, which is quite realistically beginning to not be very even at all, because this is all they've got. It's okay to say that Donald Trump, a man who has faced 2 assassination attempts in 2 months, it's okay to say that he's a threat and to use this rhetoric because of January 6th. These are the rules that we're living under now. These are her rules. These are their rules.
Was reported that happened on that day by some of your colleagues. I mean, and we have at the same time denounced political violence over and over, political rhetoric over and over again, over and over again. But I know your focus has to be on this side of the house. It can't be on your side of the house. I get that. But we also have to be careful on how you're asking me these questions. People are watching, and is what you are saying about us raising political violent rhetoric, whatever, however you just formulated it, this is an administration that has denounced and condemned any type of political rhetoric or violence. It is the reason why this president decided to run in 2020. That is why the president decided to come back. He believed that it is important to save the soul of America, of our nation. And he believed it was important that we continue to fight for our democracy, fight for our freedom. That's what you see from this administration. I'm moving on. Go ahead.
Yeah, she's moving on. You know what? We're moving on as well. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Karine. Just, yeah, bye-bye. We're moving on too. We got to move on because I don't want us to be angry during this entire program. There's too much to be happy about right now in this country. And by the way, even that you should be happy about, because let me tell you something. If this is all they've got at this point, 50 days out from the election, we went through the chart yesterday, watched the video, where Donald Trump is in a better position right now in mid-September toward Election Day than he was 4 years ago against Joe Biden and 8 years ago against Hillary Clinton. He is running way ahead of where he was in either of those presidential elections. The worm is turning right now. Kamala Harris got nothing out of that debate because I told you the day after that debate that she didn't win the debate. Donald Trump actually did better in that debate on the issues and on the substance of the issues. They've got nothing right now. They are scrambling right now in the fact that she and her colleagues continue to use outrageous, divisive, threatening political rhetoric about Donald Trump, will not back down for it, and is running on basically January 6th, January 6th, January 6th. He's a dictator. This is good. This is positive, and this is hopeful, because if that's all they've got 50 days out, they are screwed. Yesterday, J.D. Vance had a pretty great rally. And boy, the more he gets in front of these audiences, he was good at the beginning, but he's getting better and better and better. The more you see J.D. Vance, the more you recognize this is why Donald Trump picked him, so he can campaign in Western Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and gather up all those votes of the people that he represents right now in the state of Ohio. And during this rally, he took a moment to, engage in a friendly back and forth with the New York Times reporter. And it's really good stuff.
You know, Mike, I'll give you a question just to be nice. This will be our last question. And this is the New York Times, so don't hold it against them.
The paper of record, New York Times. I appreciate you inviting.
By the way, I appreciate the reporter sort of playing along and saying, hey, that's the paper of record, New York Times, pal. But even before we get into this, I think it needs to be acknowledged that J.D. Vance right here, during a rally from the podium, giving microphones to hostile reporters so that he can engage and answer their questions. Can you imagine Kamala Harris doing this? Not that she would have any hostile reporters. Can you imagine Tim Walz doing this? I mean, J.D. Vance right here is taking more live questions as if this rally is a press conference than Kamala Harris has since the first day she was appointed, anointed, coronated as the nominee for the Democrats. Do you realize that she has never engaged in one open press conference, gaggle, exchange with reporters at all? And here's J.D. Vance doing it just in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon during a rally. And yet the reporters still love the Democrats. They are the most self-loathing individuals you will ever meet. That because of their own warped and narrow political ideology and wanting to be in the cool kids club by supporting Democrats, they don't realize that they are actually undermining their own existence as political reporters in this nation. This guy right here, J.D. Vance, and the top of the ticket, Donald Trump, their election in November and their administration over the next 4 years will be the most important validating action for political reporters that can happen. If Kamala Harris wins this election, it will be an affirmation and confirmation that DC political reporters are completely and totally irrelevant. And they don't even get that. All right, sorry. I promise I'll let the video run.
the tough questions and your crowd welcoming the tough questions here. The question is
I'm sure you're going to ask me an easy one though, Mike, just to make up for it.
The question is about Springfield, not about the situation, but the style, which I think is something new that we're seeing on the campaign trail. You've said, regardless of what the exact precise facts are here, it's worth it to make the larger point of in town overrun by immigration issues.
I'd say, Mike, you ask your question, yes, but no, I didn't say regardless of the precise facts. I said you have to listen to what people are saying. Right? The media has tried to say now for days that I've made up this story. I haven't made up anything. I've just listened to people who are telling me these things. And when I said, and the media always does this, they're very dishonest. When I say that I created a story, I'm talking about the media story. By focusing the press's attention on what's going on in Springfield, I'm not making anything up. I'm just telling you what my own constituents are telling me. But ask your question.
That's the point. Your willingness to shine a light on issues you see as important.
Sure.
And I'm wondering if you can describe, if you know where your line is on that. Something, at what point what's something you're willing not to say in order to make a point that is important to you?
Well,
all right. Now, we'll let him finish, but it's an interesting question. Before he gets into it, I'd like to sort of pull on this New York Times reporter's thread just a teeny little bit and sort of expand this to a larger political question that I think is fair having in the United States of America. In other words, would this reporter ask Joe Biden, for instance, Mr. President, you continue to repeat this lie about Charlottesville that's been debunked across the board. Donald Trump never said that neo-Nazis and white nationalists were very fine people, but you continue to repeat that lie. I understand the point you're trying to make, but do you have a line here? I mean, is there any line that you're not willing to cross in terms of lying and slandering and defaming your political opponents just so you can make some sort of political inroads? And of course, we already know the answer to that question because we've observed Joe Biden over the last 50 years. Ask Clarence Thomas, ask Mitt Romney, ask Paul Ryan, ask Robert Bork, ask anybody who has gotten in the way of his craven political career. Of course, he doesn't have a line that he's not willing to cross. But the question's never asked over there, is it? Nah, it sure isn't. It sure enough isn't. And of course, Kamala Harris could be asked this question if she ever deigned to allow a reporter like this to ask a question. For instance, Kamala Harris, you continue to repeat this lie that Donald Trump has promised a bloodbath if he doesn't win the election. But of course, everybody knows that he was talking about an economic bloodbath for the auto industry. It had nothing to do with violence. It had nothing to do with blood. He was talking about the economic ramifications for the auto industry and the nation at large should your ticket win the presidency. So why do you keep repeating that lie? Is there no line that you're not willing to cross? You see how this game is played? But no, the only question that's ever asked is of, first of all, a politician willing to engage in questions and answers. That would be, in this case, J.D. Vance. And the only question has to do with cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. It is really amazing how these reporters operate and do their job. But now that the question's out there, I really want you to see the answer.
I mean, come on.
If you know.
Mike. Well,
Here's
Mike,
a question for him,
Mike,
not the crowd.
What I wouldn't say is that the New York Times is a respectable paper. That's one thing I wouldn't be willing to say. But all kidding aside, if one person had called me and said, I'm seeing this in Springfield, we maybe let that pass. When 4, 5, 6, 7 people are telling me they see something in Springfield, and on top of it, that there are certain people who refuse to listen to them, who refuse to take their concerns seriously, that's when it's my job as a United States Senator to listen to my constituents. That's really, it's very simple. Now, I mean, look, there's a lot of crazy stuff you read about. I mean, one of these things, I don't know if you saw the story from a couple of years ago that like the Defense Department had declassified the UFO stuff. Did you see that? That was a crazy story. I don't talk about that because I have no idea what's going on. So my standard for whether I talk about something, Mike, is whether enough people that I trust bring it to me, at least to the point where I feel like I've got to investigate it myself, not just trust the media to do their job, because a lot of times they don't. So
that's right. And that really is the bottom line here, because, well, as my late great mentor right over my shoulder, Andrew Breitbart, watching over me every single day we do this show, used to tell me, every single story is really ultimately a media story. And this Springfield, Ohio story is, of course, a media story, not just the fact that they only paid attention to the conditions on the ground in that city after they thought they could use it as a weapon against Donald Trump and JD Vance to call them racist for spreading lies about cats and dogs. See, otherwise, they couldn't give a crap about the people of Springfield, Ohio. That includes the Haitians who are living here, too, under temporary protective status. But more importantly, JD Vance actually shows more critical thinking skills here in this answer than anybody in the press pool, because they still don't get it. They still don't realize that you don't believe them. What are they doing right now with this Springfield, Ohio story? They're saying there's no truth to it. We have 51 intelligence experts who have verified to us that this story is disinformation about the cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. Now, of course, they're not literally saying that, but it's the same game that they played with the Hunter Biden laptop story. And you see, you can fool us once, you can fool us twice, you can fool us 3 times. Oh, screw it. You can fool us for the last 30 years of our mature lives. But at some point, we're going to get it. And when we hear a story and we see things out of Springfield, Ohio, and we hear firsthand reports from people who live there saying this is happening, and some reporter in New York or Washington, D.C. sits up there with his blow-dried hair and a teleprompter saying, no, it's not happening. Well, at some point, we're not going to believe you, Mr. Blow-dried hair. We're going to believe the good people of Springfield, Ohio, because you have no credibility anymore. Which brings us to the actual circumstances on the ground in Springfield, Ohio. You'll remember this moment from the debate. Oh, look, it's a TV journalist with a really nice looking blow-dried head of hair. What a coincidence. You know him, that's David Muir. He was one of the moderators at the ABC News debate. And when Donald Trump raised the issue of the circumstances on the ground in Springfield, Ohio, he said this.
There have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or...
Sorry, let me start that at the beginning. I apologize.
There have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people on television saying their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
All right. Now, David Muir, as you just saw, was taking that from the city manager. He was quoting the city manager in Springfield, Ohio, because before the debate, they had a whole army of pre-debate fact checkers, which I always love. What's Trump going to lie about? Well, let's get the facts in line before he lies about them. What a job they've got over there. And they checked with the city manager of Springfield, Ohio, to ask about the reports that pets are going missing because of the migrant crisis in that town. And, well, you saw the answer. There's no credible evidence of it. He says that's because he checked with the Springfield city manager. But here's the problem. And that was a big moment, right? And there's David Muir, and he's got his blow-dried hair, and he's got his fact checks from his army of interns who have already set it up for him. And it was a great gotcha moment. And you see, Trump's lying. Trump's lying. The problem is, yesterday, an investigative reporter who has been combing through the videos of Springfield City Commission meetings found a fascinating little clip featuring this guy. This is from 5 months ago. It's March of 2024. And this guy right here, you know who that guy is? That's the city manager. That's the city manager in Springfield, Ohio. Allegedly the same guy that David Muir's legion of fact checkers proactively asked about the reports of cats and dogs, etc., going missing in Springfield, Ohio. What did the city manager say in March of 2024 about this very issue? Before the debate, before the memes, before Trump Vance, Gosh, this is so long ago. Joe Biden was still the candidate for president. Before all of it, what did they say in an open meeting on video?
Laws and culture is 180 degrees different of what they're used to. And one of the things that I heard that bothered me very much, I've actually had quite a few people contact me here lately, is some pretty horrid things occurring to domesticated animal in the neighborhood. We've had some stuff in the park that again, they're being taken advantage of for reasons other than, and if you shake your head, Brian.
No. I asked me if there was proof. I just don't have proof of it.
I have the same thing. People that have confided in me have asked me for anonymity. I can't give their names up.
I mean, we haven't seen the proof that you're telling me, and I've heard about it too.
Yeah,
I've heard about it too. I've heard about it too. That was in March. That's the city manager in March describing exactly what we've all been talking about now. That domesticated animals are being horribly treated, terrible things happening to them. Several people, he said, have come up and told me that. One city council member says, "Do you have any proof of it? Because I've heard about it too." Now, whether the city manager has said, no, we don't have any proof, and therefore that's the answer that they gave David Muir. Maybe the answer he gave David Muir is, listen, ABC News, here's the thing. I'm hearing this all the time from the people here, but they don't have actual physical proof of it, but they say they see it. They're firsthand accounts. They've lost their animals. But are you asking me for firsthand proof of evidence, of objective, that I can take to the police and show? No, I'm getting reports from people who have lost their animals and they're nowhere to be found anymore. And it's never happened like this before. But I don't have direct evidence that Haitians are eating cats and dogs. And that's all David Muir needed. You see, he didn't tell the whole story. I'm speculating here. He just said what he needed to say. There's no proof of that. Well, actually, firsthand accounts are proof. It's evidence. You can actually take firsthand eyewitness accounts into a court of law and you can use it as evidence. So it's not true that there's no evidence. There's actually firsthand reports. And this was contemporaneous in March when it was happening. But the most important part of that clip was at the very end, when that city manager said, listen, they're confiding in me. They're telling me this is happening, but they want to remain anonymous. Think about that for a minute. The residents of that city are so scared. They're so traumatized by what's going on in their town that they are acknowledging and reporting that these bad things are happening, but they want to remain anonymous. Partly because potential repercussions from the very people who are causing great harm to their city right now in Springfield, but also, ask yourself for a second. Why would anyone want to remain anonymous? Why wouldn't they want their face and their name and their entire public persona linked to the story that cats and dogs are being terribly treated in Springfield, Ohio? Why would they want to remain anonymous? And my answer to you is, have you been paying attention for the last 2 weeks? Have you seen what the national media has done to this story? Have you seen how they're trying to destroy people's lives? Claiming that anyone who claims such a thing is racist and a liar and a propagandist and responsible for bomb threats and responsible. Of course they want to remain anonymous. Who would want to put their name on these claims? The behavior of the media during this entire thing ensures that there will never be someone to step forward and say, here's what I know and here's what I saw. Because the first person who does that will be destroyed. But of course, the New York Times reporter speaking with J.D. Vance, all he wants to talk about is whether J.D. Vance has a line about anything that is off limits to make a political point. And, well, it's funny because by asking that question, as J.D. Vance just illustrated, well, the New York Times asking the question actually proves exactly the point J.D. Vance has been making this entire time. Kamala Harris keeps telling us she's a prosecutor, right? I was a prosecutor. As a prosecutor, I was the DA in San Francisco. I was the attorney general in California. I prosecuted people, right? She uses that word a lot because she wants to make it sound like she's engaged in another prosecution. See, the more they can make you think that Donald Trump is in some way a defendant or a criminal, they like that imagery. They like using that language. So she's a prosecutor, right? And by the way, in this country right now, one of the top concerns that people have is violent crime that has exploded during the Biden-Harris administration, much because we've got Soros-funded district attorneys in various cities all around the country who are ignoring the law and letting criminals walk free. You know that. You see it all the time. But they also, frankly, are concerned about crime right now. Because the Biden administration has been missing in action. That's why they're lying about the FBI statistics and claiming that crime is actually going down when it's not. It's not at all the case. So they want to paint this picture of Kamala Harris as a prosecutor because the subliminal message is you're worried about crime, then you want a prosecutor in the White House. But here's the thing. If, in fact, she is a prosecutor, that means by definition, she has to have a law degree. And last I checked, if you have a law degree, it means that you had to take at the very least con law. I think it's Con Law 101. It's like one of the first classes of your first semester when you go to get a law degree, constitutional law. And I know it was a long time ago for Kamala Harris, but there's some fundamentals in the Constitution that I think we all sort of basically understand. In fact, you don't have to have a law degree at all to understand the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. They taught it to us in grade school, right? They're pretty simple. That was the beauty of our founders. They could put things into word to make it very digestible for people 250 years ago and today. It means the same thing. And that Second Amendment, the second one that's there to protect your ability to keep and bear arms for various reasons, it's pretty fundamental and it's pretty real. But Kamala Harris, the prosecutor, she doesn't appear to have a good working knowledge of the Second Amendment. It was exemplified yesterday during a sit-down that she had with the National Association of Black Journalists. Now, we're joining this question midstream because the first part of it is a whole lot of gobbledygook word salad. It's not really word salad, though. We keep saying Kamala Harris is delivering word salad. But here's the thing. Salad at least has some basic nutritional good, even if it's just a whole lot of lettuce. At the very least, you get some fiber. You know, at the very least, you know you're cleaning out your colon a bit with that salad. But you don't even get that benefit from her word salad. No, there's no benefit at all. In fact, you probably feel a little extra constipated after listening to her salad. That said, she was asked specifically by one of these reporters, listen, we've got an epidemic of gun violence in our cities. Now, I'm paraphrasing the question. She didn't ask it the way I'm about to ask it. I wish she had, but here was the basics of the question. We have an epidemic of gun violence in our cities, cities that, of course, are unanimously across the board run by liberal Democrats. There are Black men dying in our streets on a nightly basis, directly related to the availability of illegal guns in our neighborhoods. And all you have proposed is an assault weapons ban and a background check. And these guns that are being used to kill our brothers and sisters and our fathers and our sons, those guns are not acquired through legal means. They're not assault weapons. They're handguns. And a background check ain't going to stop the violence. So what can you really do for us? Again, that's not how she asked the question. I wish she had. But after quite a bit of gobbledygook about background checks, the reporter finally gets frustrated and jumps in and says, answer my question. Now let's pick it up right there.
Where someone can buy a lethal weapon if they've been found by a court to be a danger to themselves or others. You might just want to know.
And respectfully, we do understand that.
But you're asking about...
I'm asking specifically about handguns, because many of those handguns aren't purchased in places.
Universal background checks apply to handguns.
Yes,
they do.
But in many instances, those handguns aren't even bought lawfully. Yes.
Which is why I also have been very adamant for years. In fact, I myself protested at a gun show probably 10, 15 years ago about the gun show loophole and why we need to close that. Because what ends up happening is at gun shows at flea markets, gun dealers are not, under existing law in the past, required to register their sales.
She is such a complete and total moron, a lying moron. Did you see what happened there? Now understand something, and listen, I don't like to, dwell in racial politics, but there is something fascinating going on here, and I appreciate this journalist actually asking the question from a Black perspective about gun violence, handgun violence, illegally purchased handguns, creating deadly nights in Southside Chicago or in Baltimore or in Detroit and Los Angeles or New York, all the cities run by Democrats. I appreciate her calling her out, saying, no, the violence in our community, it's not from assault weapons, and it's not going to be solved by a background check. There's something else going on here, right? But think about this for a minute. Kamala Harris, all you hear her talk about is an assault weapons ban, assault weapons ban, assault weapons ban. Who does that message appeal to? It appeals to white suburban mothers who are terrified about sending their children to an elementary school because they think there's going to be a school shooting. Because the assault weapon, sadly, and by the way, before you even put it in the comments, I know there's no such thing as an assault weapon. They can't define assault weapon. They don't know what an assault weapon is. There's no such thing as an assault weapon. Every gun, theoretically, is a weapon that can be used to assault someone. It's gobbledygook. It's political wordplay. They never will define what an assault weapon is because they want to be able to put anything into that category because they don't care about what they're banning. They care about being able to have the power to ban them. And then they'll just throw everything into the category of assault weapon. All right, so I get that. I know that. But so that we can engage in this conversation, let's use their language. They like to say that AR-15s and the like are assault weapons that they wish to ban, right? And sadly, oftentimes, those are the guns that are used in these horrific school shootings. Now, as bad as school shootings are, when it comes to the overall violence in this country, especially gun violence, it's kind of a pimple on the butt, statistically speaking, compared to all of the gun violence that we're seeing in this country, specifically inflicted upon the African-American community in our major cities. That's why this woman is asking this question, because you talk about gun violence and all you want to talk about is the thing that's going to get you votes from white suburban women, but it ain't going to make a difference in our community. You want to make a difference in our community and save our children's lives, you're going to be focusing on illegally obtained handguns, and she's nowhere to be found there. That's why this is such a powerful question. But I need to pick it up one more time so you can see what happened here. When the journalist interrupts her and says, I'm talking about handguns and specifically guns that are illegally obtained because they're not going to fall under your background check provisions. So watch what she does.
Handguns are purchased in places.
Universal background checks apply to handguns.
Yes.
They do.
But in many instances, those handguns aren't even bought lawfully. Yes.
Which is why I also have been very adamant for years. In fact, I myself protested at a gun show probably 10, 15 years ago.
My God, that is just, it's beautiful. It's like chef's kiss exquisite in how moronic that is on multiple levels. First of all, $20 right now to whoever can find the video of Kamala Harris 10 or 15 years ago protesting at a gun show. I need to see that video. I mean it. $20 whole is yours when you find that. I'm going to regret that. Secondly, the question was specifically that these guns that are killing our neighbors, our community, are obtained illegally purchased guns. And she hears that and immediately says, yeah, that's why we need to close the gun show loophole. Madam Vice President, Madam Senator, Madam Attorney General, Madam District Attorney, Madam Prosecutor, Madam Law Degree. Gun show purchases are not illegal purchases. Gun show purchases are legal. She raises the question of illegally obtained firearms, and she immediately says, yeah, that's why we have to close the gun show loophole. She is like a Mad Libs of left-wing policy positions from the last 20 years. No matter what the challenge is, no matter what the issue is, just fill in the blank and she'll grab something. Gun show loophole, that's a thing. I remember us talking about that one time. I'm sure I signed a letter that raised money on gun show loopholes. Here, just fill that in, gun show loophole. There, you got your answer. Can we move on, please? Gun show loophole. Yeah, you know, a lot of gangbangers in South Side of Chicago, when they need to get a gun, they need to get a 38 special. They're going to go to a gun show. They're going to drive out there to Skokie, and they're going to wait for the local Rotary Club to open up so that they can get their gun at a gun show. You moron. If she weren't so dangerous, it would be funny. People are dying because they're buying guns from the trunk of a car in a back alley. And the prosecutors, the Democrats who are the prosecutors in those cities, are doing nothing about that because they don't care, because there's no votes there. Where are her votes? Assault gun bans, assault weapon bans. Now, you're going to hear a little overlap in this video because there's two that both contain similar information, but she goes on and on about the assault weapons ban. But get this. Well, I want you to see it first, and then I'll echo what she said.
Yes.
Which is why I also have been very adamant for years. In fact, I myself protested at a gun show probably 10, 15 years ago about the gun show loophole and why we need to close that. Because what ends up happening is that gun shows at flea markets, gun dealers are not, under existing law in the past, required to register their sales. And so you are exactly right that a lot of homicides, for example, a good number of them, I don't have the statistic in front of my mind, are committed with illegally purchased guns. And that's...
Do you see what she did? I mean, you're right that these guns are purchased at gun shows without a background check. So you're right. These guns are illegally purchased. A gun show purchase is not an illegal purchase, you idiot. But she has no idea what she's saying. You can tell how she's scrambling. You can tell how she's just... because she is woefully unprepared to be president, let alone run for president. This is why we have primaries, because she wouldn't even have made it to Iowa again with this kind of amateurville. But then she goes on because she literally has and here's the problem. I don't care if a politician is dumb, and I don't care if they don't know what they're talking about. But if you're going to violate my Second Amendment rights, and you're going to make the case why you can confiscate weapons that are legally purchased and owned in this country, you better know what the hell you're talking about. It's bad enough that a politician wants to infringe on your rights. It's even worse when they're morons and don't even understand the right that they're infringing on.
That's why we need to address each entry point in the issue, including universal background checks, closing the gun show loophole, and what we need to do as a general matter to focus not only on reaction to crime, but prevention of crime. So you're raising a very important issue that has many facets, including what we need to do in terms of reasonable gun safety laws and what we need to do around crime prevention, what we need to do around crime deterrence. But listen, I have personally prosecuted homicide cases. I have held the hands of mothers who have come to me crying, who have said, I only want to talk to Kamala, because they knew when they sat down, I would treat them with the dignity and respect that they were entitled and due about the loss of their child, often their son, to gun violence and the need to take it seriously. And we must take it seriously in every way, understanding it's not just about a soundbite. It's about a comprehensive approach that deals with the tragedy of, to your point, everyday gun violence in America. It's real. It has had a profound impact in terms of trauma that for the most part has gone undiagnosed and untreated. The trauma that exists in communities around the violence of losing their children, losing a brother, losing a father, an uncle, all of that must be addressed. And we have to have a holistic response to it.
Yeah. And then she went on to say, hey, I'm not trying to take anyone's guns away. I mean, I own a gun. Tim Walz owns a gun. No one's trying to take your guns away, but we do need an assault weapons ban, which means that they are trying to take people's guns away. I'm not trying to take anyone's guns away, only if it's this kind of gun. This is like when she said, I'm not interested in confiscating anybody's guns. We're just going to do a mandatory buyback program, which now she claims she doesn't support, but she did just 4 years ago. A mandatory buyback program. Think about that language for just a quick moment, because it is the personification of Orwellian doublespeak here when it comes to the Second Amendment policies of the Democrats. A mandatory buyback program. Let's start with buyback program. The government is going to buy a weapon back from you, but a buyback suggests that you purchased the gun from the government in the first place, right? See, let's say you purchased the gun from Walmart. Well, then if it were a buyback program, it would be Walmart buying your gun back because you made the initial purchase from Walmart. So it's not really a buyback program, is it? It's the government taking your gun and then deciding what kind of money they're going to throw your way to make up for the fact that they just infringed on your Second Amendment right and took your personal private property from you, right? But it's a buyback program, not a gun confiscation. And then let's start with the first word there, the mandatory part. Yeah, it's not gun confiscation. It's just a buyback program that's mandatory. We're not confiscating guns. You just have to give us your gun or else we'll throw you in jail. But it's not gun confiscation. No, it's a buyback program, a mandatory buyback program. What if you don't want to sell your gun back to us? Oh, you don't have a choice. It's mandatory. You don't want to give it to, I mean, it's mandatory. You have no choice. You're going to keep your gun? Are you? Boys, send in the troops and confiscate those guns. And then we'll give you $40. But don't call it gun confiscation, because that's not what it is. It's a mandatory buyback program. If there's any doubt who Kamala Harris is and where she stands on your basic constitutional rights, and it doesn't get much more basic than you being able to defend yourself, defend your property, defend your family with a lawfully purchased gun. If there's any question, let's check out the prosecutor from many years ago. The prosecutor, when she was the district attorney of San Francisco, in this recently unearthed video, she is standing next to the mayor of San Francisco. You recognize him. That's right. Back then, he was just Mayor Hair Gel. Now he's Governor Hair Gel, Gavin Newsom. And they're talking about new anti-gun legislation in the city of San Francisco, which, by the way, is absolutely dominated by Democrats. So if you want to see the perfect utopia of gun laws put into action to, stamp out horrific gun violence in communities, if you want to see the utopia of how Democrats get things done, just take a look at San Francisco and, frankly, California at large, because they've had their way. They've been able to pass whatever laws they want about guns, about taxes, about spending, about education, about the homeless, about what, you name it. They get a blank check in that state because Republicans have zero voice. So you want to know how their really great anti-gun legislations, as you see on the Chiron there in San Francisco, worked out? Just take a look at the crime statistics in San Francisco, and you'll have a really good idea of how good they are. But here she was as the district attorney talking about this legislation that she championed, that she was celebrating, and how your rights fit in with that legislation.
Responsible behaviors among everybody in the community, and just because you legally possess a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean that we're not going to walk into that home and check to see if you're being responsible and safe in the way you conduct your affairs.
Did you catch that? Because it's a little off mic, but it's worth repeating.
Locked home doesn't mean that we're not
sorry.
going to walk into a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean that we're not going to walk into that home and check to see if you're being responsible.
Just because you have a gun and possess it in your locked home doesn't mean we're not going to enter that home and make sure that you're handling that gun responsibly. Responsibly based on the opinion of Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, because they're gun experts, in addition to being constitutional law experts. You own a gun, you purchased it legally, lawfully, constitutionally. You keep it in your home that you own, the privacy and sanctity of your private property, your private abode. But in Kamala Harris's world, in Kamala Harris's San Francisco, there's nothing stopping her and her goons from breaking down your door and making sure that you're responsibly owning that gun based on the standard that she has decided. That's Kamala Harris's San Francisco, and, well, your town as well, coming the day after Election Day in November if we don't stay focused. Something else happened at this appearance at the National Association of Black Journalists that we are reluctant to show to you, but honestly, it's worth your attention. I regret to inform you that Kamala Harris, the woman who's been anointed, appointed, coronated, the woman who is now the Democrat nominee for president, and in 50 days could very well be the president-elect of the United States without actually gaining a single vote up until this point because there was no primary process. They just decided. That woman, Kamala Harris, I'm not saying this definitively. I am merely speculating. But based on her performance yesterday, I think it's worth once again revisiting the question, is she a highly functioning alcoholic? I want to be wrong here. And by the way, I want to be the first one to say that I'm sure I am wrong. In fact, I'm sure that she's just, quirky. Yeah, that's it. She's quirky. But I want to show you a big chunk of this interview, this appearance with the National Association of Black Journalists. We're going to watch it together, and you tell me if you see any red flags. Do you have anybody in your life that sort of, overuses now and again? Maybe they like their rosé and Chardonnay. Maybe they like some tequila shots now and again, or maybe just a vodka soda, vodka on the rocks. Margaritas are nice. I like those. Maybe they're going all European this summer and they're drinking Aperol spritzes. Maybe they've just got a pocket full of gummies. Either way, whatever the substance of choice is, if you know someone like that who overindulges now and again, I want you to think about their behavior, their speech patterns, their mannerisms while you watch the woman who wants to be president.
It's a crying shame. I mean, my heart breaks for this community. There were children, elementary school children, who it was school photo day. You remember what that's like? Going to school on picture day? Who were dressed up in their best, got all ready, knew what they were going to wear the night before, and had to be evacuated. Children. A whole community put in fear. And I'll say a couple things about it. One, I learned a long time ago in my career, having a background as a prosecutor, when you have these positions, when you have that kind of microphone in front of you, you really ought to understand at a very deep level how much your words have meaning. I learned at a very young stage in my career that the meaning of my words could impact whether somebody was free or in prison. As Attorney General, I was of California, 5th largest economy in the world. I was acutely aware that my words could move markets.
There's more to this, but I think you're already seeing certain telltale signs here, weird mannerisms, weird behavior. And of course, there's the speech thing, the odd pauses where pauses shouldn't occur during a normal thought process when someone is articulating an idea. There's a lot of that going on. A lot. And again, I think she's just quirky. Or she sort of took the edge off before the interview. But I wanted to pause here because this is something that she often repeats. Listen, everything we saw yesterday from her are things that she repeats a lot because they're all scripted lines. She has memorized these lines. She's good at it, I got to say. I mean, if this whole thing doesn't work out, they might do a Netflix series and she'll play some badass prosecutor or something because she's a DA, don't you know? But it is chilling to hear a person who wants to be president of the United States look back at the other two major executive jobs she's had, district attorney of a county in San Francisco and the attorney general of the state of California, and highlight the awareness that she had when she had those jobs about how much power she had to destroy people's lives. It's weird to me. It's a very weird thing. She does this a lot. She talks about how she recognized as the district attorney that she had so much power. She could bring charges against people and then 2 weeks later just drop them and there were no repercussions. And those 2 weeks would have been hell for that person. And she knew she had that power. It's like, who runs for office to take on an executive role like district attorney or mayor or president, thank you very much, and focuses on the way the power that comes with that position could ruin people's lives? Isn't that weird? Have you ever actually heard any kind of elected official with executive power, from mayor to governor to DA or what have you, out loud muse about how their position could ruin people's lives, innocent people's lives, or in this case, like she said, move markets? I say one thing and I can move markets. Really, if you can move markets, that means, you could make a few investments, give a speech, and the market would move in your favor, ma'am. What exactly are you saying here? But of course, she may be saying all of this because, when you have an afternoon cocktail or two, the barriers start to get removed and, you start to play loosey-goosey with some of the things that are on your mind. And you feel freer to sort of share. It's just us talking anyway, isn't it? Could we have another round here, please? She goes on.
When you are bestowed with a microphone that is that big, there is a profound responsibility that comes with that. That is an extension of what should not be lost in this moment, this concept of the public trust. To then understand what the public trust means. It means that you have been invested with trust to be responsible in the way you use your words, much less how you conduct yourself.
I'm sorry, I just got to point it out. You caught it, right? Did you catch it? Just real fast. Again, I go back to that image of that person that you know in your life who overindulges now and again. You know what it's like when you're around them and the way they speak. Listen to this again.
What should not be lost in this moment, this concept of the public trust. To then understand what the public trust means. It means that you have been invested with trust to be responsible in the way you use your words, much less how you conduct yourself. And especially when you have been and then seek to be again President of the United States of America. And so I go back to, it's a crying shame, literally. What's happening to those families, those children in that community, not to mention what is happening in terms of, look, you say you care about law enforcement resources being put into this because of these serious threats that are being issued against a community that is living a productive, good life before this happened.
Can I point out that that moment right there was finally the conclusion of a sentence that lasted, I believe, 2.5 minutes? Did you notice that? I mean, don't get me wrong. There were about 18 or 19 different thoughts that were expressed, but none of it ever reached a conclusion with a period at the end. And she just kept going on and on and on and on, which again is probably just a demonstration of her very quirky personality, or if you have someone in your life that's like this, is definitely a hallmark of people who just had one too many. Oh, and she wasn't done.
And spewing lies that are grounded in tropes that are age old. And look, I said it not very far from here the other day at the debate. This is not new. This is not new in terms of these tropes. This is not new in terms of where it's coming from. And, you know, whether it is refusing to rent to people, rent to Black families, whether it is taking out a full-page ad in the New York Times against 5 innocent Black and Latino teenagers, the Central Park 5, calling for their execution, whether it is referring to the first Black president of the United States with a lie, birther lies. And look, the American people deserve, and I do believe want better than this. I do believe that. I know the vast majority of us as Americans know we have so much more in common than what separates us. I know that. I know that regardless of someone's background, their race, their gender, their geographic location, I know that people are deeply troubled.
Okay, hear me out. It might be a Xanax. All right. I know I was alluding to some alcohol consumption, cocktails, maybe some wine. I even suggested that it could have been a handful of gummies. Those Cheech and Chong ones look interesting, although I wouldn't touch the stuff personally. But this could be something more pharmaceutical. This could be some sort of prescription. And maybe listen, the reason that she doesn't do these things is because maybe she's got some tension issues. Maybe she gets highly anxious about interviews. After all, there's a lot on the line. One would forgive her for having an elevated heart rate or high blood pressure at the thought of doing a one-on-one interview of sorts. So maybe a doctor along the way said, you know, just a half a Xanax. Have the half a Xanax, it'll take the edge off, right? I'm trying to explore all options here. I'm trying to be as generous as possible. And again, I'm holding open the possibility that she's just kind of a quirky person. But the more you watch this clip, and by the way, I just want you to know that we're about 4 minutes into a 5-minute clip here. Her inner monologue right now, as she continues on this rambling, never-ending compound sentence of just diarrhea of ideas being spewed out into her microphone. Her inner monologue right now is, oh, honey, you are nailing this. Just keep going. Just go. You're riffing, man. You are on a roll. Just go with it. Just go, go, go. Oh, yeah. Mention the Central Park 5. Absolutely. Just keep going. Tropes. Say tropes more. Tropes. Because that sounds smart. That sounds intelligent. That'll get people. That's what's going on in her noggin. She's absolutely nailing it. Let's let her conclude.
By what is happening to that community in Springfield, Ohio. And it's got to stop. And we've got to say that you cannot be entrusted with standing behind the seal of the President of the United States of America, engaging in that hateful rhetoric that, as usual, is designed to divide us as a country, is designed to have people pointing fingers at each other.
No, I'm sorry. There's something physical going on here. All right, I want to play just back this one part where she says designed twice, right? I want you to listen to how she says designed, and then I want you to look at her mouth specifically, the formation of the words when she says them. I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. right? Quirky personality. That's what it is. This is quirks. Watch her mouth and listen to her pronounce the word designed. And you tell me what's going on.
Mind.
Oh, sorry. Here we go.
Hateful rhetoric that, as usual, is designed to divide us as a country, is designed to have people pointing fingers at each other.
You see it? Did you see? I mean, look at. There's even sort of like there's a downturn of the left side of her mouth that is also symptomatic of people who are like, the guy has been having a little. No, I love you, man. You're my favorite dude. I can't believe the Eagles suck so much this year. Eagles, right? And like one side of their mouth is saying one word, and the other side of their mouth is just checked out for the rest of the conversation. Look at her say designed.
To have people pointing fingers at each other.
Yeah.
It's designed to do that. And I think most people in our country, regardless of their race, are starting to see through this nonsense and to say, you know what, let's turn the page on this. This is exhausting and it's harmful and it's hateful and grounded in some age-old stuff that we should not have the tolerance for. So let's turn the page and chart a new way forward and say, you can't have that microphone again.
A new way forward. And that's why she wants 4 more years. Listen, I your guess is as good as mine. Whatever you think it is, because it could be all those things. It could be everything combined. We could be talking the gummies, the cocktails, the wine, the Xanax, and she's a quirky person. You go ahead and let us know in the comments what you think is at play here. Something's weird. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say she's just a quirky person. And that's what you get when you got a quirky person who never actually had to get any votes and has now been coronated as the nominee and is now 50 terrifying days away from potentially being the president of the United States. By the way, one last clip of Kamala Harris. And I know I run the risk of your eyes and ears bleeding out with too much Kamala Harris in one segment, but this just in. She's debuting a brand new accent. That's right. Kamala Harris, just moments ago, appeared before the Latino caucus in Congress, the House Latino caucus. Now, we already know how she talks in front of the Congressional Black Caucus. So let's see what happens when she's putting on her best AOC, shall we?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Good afternoon. Please have a seat. Please have a seat. Please have a seat. Oh, it's good to see so many friends. I love you back.
Whoa! She did not just do that. She did not. Are you kidding me? Oh, this is just pathetic. I love you too. I love you right back, man. Are you kidding me? No, has this been doctored? Oh God, Gavin Newsom is going to so throw me in jail. This is AI. This is manipulated. There is no way she just did that.
Please have a seat. Oh, it's good to see so many friends. I love you back.
I'm sorry. I was not expecting that. I was throwing this in at the end. I saw it go by. I wanted to see what it looked like. I'm watching this with you in real time for the first time. It's like she's the sassy Latina neighbor on Sesame Street. I love you right back. What is she going to be in the She's going to be in the bus and truck of Hamilton when all is said and done. One more time. Can we do it one more time?
Have a seat. Please have a seat. Oh, it's good to see so many friends. I love you back.
All right. Well, let's just wrap it up there because I got nothing more. We'll let Kamala Harris have the last word. Muchas gracias, señorita Vice Presidente. I love you so much. Thank you for making my day. Thank you. let's save our energy for another day because we got a lot of days ahead of us before we get to that election day. Early voting starting in Pennsylvania, starting in Virginia this Friday. Tell a friend in those states. There's way too much at stake. Let's get out there. Let's do this. Thanks for watching today. Thanks for sharing a laugh with me. I hope you find this funny, because if we ain't laughing, we're crying, my friends. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.